toward the one, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the messenger, the spirit of guidance.
Welcome, everyone, to the fourth class of the evolution of the Gabrielite work. Our topic tonight is Tawil, T-A-W-I-L. It's perceiving the deep meaning behind things and beings in the manifest world. So here's a poem illustrating Tawil from my book, my poetry book, Blinding Light at Midnight. Notice how the Tawil brings meaningfulness and illumination. Three, I see thee. Emerald beauty, shot through and through with sunbeams. I see those sparrows chatting in your hair, scuffling around between your toes for a bit of nest fuzz. Do we share a secret? Are those branches stretching up to a place you feel you can never reach? I see the reflections of your intricate branches looking so flattened out on the ground below. Don't think that is a true image of your worth. You were made for more than a chat room or a nesting supplies warehouse. I know finer thoughts spin around inside your deeper layers, circulating essences and distilling them for some earthy ritual. You too inherit a legacy of access between realms as you dispense your potions. A part of you reaches into light itself. All those fractal structures now transformed into crystalline messengers, the light body of a tree. You are a majestic creation, linking by your unique presence worlds above and below, inside and outside. Tree, I see thee today.
So as Rabani Ross said, tonight we're going to be exploring Tawil in some depth. And Tawil is a topic we could spend a very long time trying to elucidate. And even in the process of preparing this class, both of us had new insights and inspirations about Tawil. So Tawil is generally described as perceiving the deeper nature of something, the archetypal nature of something. For instance, experiencing the archetypal nature of a rose. Pir Vilayat described it as seeing that which transpires behind that which appears. But there can be all different aspects and different dimensions of going about Tawil. So tonight we're going to be weaving together some different themes that we've been talking about, because in the Gabrielite work, as I think we said in the first class of the series, you can enter it through many, many different parts, but you find in the process of doing that that each part is very much interrelated with all the other parts. So some of the parts we're going to be weaving together with Tawil include presence, include the fractal, include the path always unfolding, the new creation that's born at every instant, and the returning to our familiar theme of the Gabrielite work, that it's all about our relational way of both experiencing and understanding the reality of ourself and the reality in which we exist. So we've talked previously in the past two classes, one of them on consciousness and last week on the heart. And the one on consciousness, we talked about how we tend to live in a constricted or truncated version of reality. We tend to live in our concepts about what we experience. And in terms of the heart, oftentimes we tend to be in the emotional responses or reactions to the circumstances that we're in, and doing either of those two things, which are human nature. And it's kind of the status quo of most people to be in those states actually prevents us from experiencing the true reality in which we live. So we always have to start somewhere. So in starting with Tawil, let's say you're wanting to understand the deeper nature of a rose, for instance. Well, your first way of going about that might be to look at the rose, and first you have your concepts about it. Okay, it's this kind of a rose, it's this color, it has this smell, this is the way the blossoms unfold, and so on. But you're having thoughts, maybe, and it's a very dualistic way of perception. And one other very basic principle of the Gabrielite work, which we've talked about several times, is the idea of relational unity, being in an interconnected state of experience with whatever it is that we are in relationship with, so that there's a circulation of light in both directions, so it's not static. And we talked about presence in that same sense.
So if we are in a special relationship, like Azarbash was speaking about, that includes the divine. That includes the humanness of us. And if we are looking at a relationship, what we're calling upon then is, it depends on how you look at it, but your angel, your personal Lord, your own way of relating to God. So this is going to bring out much deeper realizations than what was just described. So I'm going to describe another way of talking about how you can look at something. Let's say that we're walking, doing our walk in the morning about sunrise time, and we see the sun. The sun is rising, so now we're observing, and we see, oh, this is the time. The sun is coming up, maybe 6:02, and it's this date, and it's this location, and it takes about this many seconds for it to do its full arising, and we can note that in a notebook. Okay, that's one way of perceiving, but what we're talking about with Tawil would be something that is going to move you, something that I've got the sun shining right above my head over here, so I can feel maybe the enthusiasm of being in this light that is emerging, that was on the other side of the world. And I'm feeling my breathing is changing, and I'm feeling a kinship with all the things around me. So listen to the difference in those two different ways of perceiving, and how I'm opening myself to deeper parts, more divine, more inclusive, and more natural in the environment. So kind of get the feeling of what Tawil might feel like.
So last week the class was about the heart, and we talked about the heart being an aspect of what is termed the Barzakh, Barzakh, which is the interface between the manifest and the transcendent. It's the interface between the human and the divine. And it's last week I think we described it as the crucible in which transformation can take place. So it's kind of like the ground of the alchemical process of what takes place in manifestation through the relationship of both the human and divine sides, and both sides are necessary for this creative process to occur, and we're going to get into that a little bit later. We've previously talked about something that some of you may recall called Bekenstein's bound, which is a proof that showed that the amount of information that can come through an interface between two sides, like all of you are viewing this class on an interface, whether it's a laptop screen or a cell phone screen, that's the interface. Well, there's a finite limit about how much information can go in both directions, but that has to also be true in how much information can go in the relationship between the human and divine side, between the manifest and the transcendent. This interface is the Barzakh, And you could also say it's our heart. And so we enable more possibilities to be able to come through in both directions to the extent we've awakened to the reality that we exist on many levels, many different vibrational levels. So here's another principle of the Gabrielite work. We are multidimensional beings. We don't just exist in physical space and time. So if we weave all this into the idea of Tawil, Tawil is not taking place the way that we might initially think that it is. So again, I'll come back to the rose. We're sitting with the rose, we're contemplating the rose, and we feel like something is opening up or having a deeper communion with that rose. But we may think that we're still just the way that we were, and somehow our consciousness has moved to a different place to experience the true nature of what the rose is about. But in actuality, that couldn't possibly take place unless we had also, at least temporarily, awakened to that deeper reality on which we exist. So Tawil cannot take place unless both sides are in this opened up experience of the deeper reality of what each side is. And Tawil is not just our side getting this insight about the other side, although it's easy for us to think that. It's actually a mutual co-revelation of each side revealing something to the other, but we don't have our sensor set for the reverse direction. We're just thinking about what's happening and what we're experiencing. But in actuality, we can say that what we're experiencing is now opened up to a deeper discovery of its own being through what comes through us. So now let's pour into the stew one more ingredient that we've talked about, uniqueness. And because each of us is unique, Tawil cannot be the same experience for two people with any two things. So two people sitting with the same rose can't have the same true experience of Tawil because each person is unique.
So this is the perfect place to bring in this idea that of Gabriel again, the foundation of our whole work, the Gabrielite work, is this idea of the announcing, Gabriel announcing Gabriel's self in everything that we are perceiving. And meaning that it is a coming forth, it's a theophany. Theo meaning God, phany, Phany, meaning like epiphany or bursting forth. That the divine is always bursting forth into creation because of that, being that hidden treasure, yearning to be known, yearning to be loved, and also knowing that all the qualities, all the possible beings that were in an unformed state were wanting to be manifest. And so through compassion, the divine said, Kun, Esto, and we were there, and we were all brought into existence. The spirits before us, or the consciousness before us, was all brought into being. And this keeps happening. And this is called Tanzil in the Sufi tradition, Tanzil, the process of coming into form, being manifest. And Tawil is actually the partner of that, talking about balance here, the balance to that, where we're reaching back up into those realms in a way, and allowing those realms to be united in our experience. So again, it's like Gabriel being announced, Gabriel coming through. In other words, the divine, human divine experience coming through in our experience, in our own consciousness. And it is very different in different people, of course. You can imagine Gabriel announcing to each one of us in a different kind of way, and knowing the things that bring us to joy and bring us to realization, and the things that are manifest in our own lives. Take it from there.
Yeah, so yes, Gabriel is at the heart of the Gabrielite work. And we tend to think about this function of Gabriel, which is very much true and accurate, of Gabriel announcing itself into manifestation. But we could also think of it as that Gabriel is simultaneously announcing to the divine being the true nature of the divine being's own self, which is revealed by what is uniquely manifest in creation through each one of us.
Mm.
So we're each Gabriel announcing our unique divinity to everything in manifestation and vice versa. But also, we could say that the Gabriel of our being is continually announcing to the divine being the wisdom that's gained, the knowledge of the divine being to the divine being's own self, which was one of the things that brought about creation. Recall, the Sufis say that God was a hidden treasure desiring to be known and to be loved, but those two functions could only take place through a relationship with the manifest beings. And we might be thinking that, okay, God was kind of unconscious, and so we're going to hold a mirror up and God can see God's own being in this mirror, and now God will understand God's self as God is. God just didn't know it, but that's not how it works. What's being revealed to God, what's being revealed to the divine, is an emergent reality of divinity that was not there except for what we've brought to it. And so I found just a sentence in Ibn Arabi, this is in Alone with the Alone, which I thought was just absolutely wonderful. It's talking about the mystic lover. And I'm paraphrasing. He said, the lover strives to bring into existence something that does not yet exist in the beloved. And to me, this is just an absolute.
One more time.
Yeah, the lover strives to bring into existence something that does not yet exist in the beloved. So this is a remarkable statement. It's not saying that we're here just to discover the true nature of what the divine is all about, and even thinking that it's waiting for us to discover something in our own being that's there. We just haven't accessed it yet. It hasn't been there until this relationship unfolds, and it's actually created by virtue of this relationship, and the same on the divine side. So what we feel we experience in the process of Tawil, we are discovering the deeper nature of whatever we're in relationship with. We can say God's side of Tawil is God's discovery of something emerging in the divine being that wasn't, you can't even say it was a latent possibility, because that implies it was stored somewhere. It did not exist until it was brought forth by this relationship. So this is a remarkable way to think about what goes on in our process of awakening, because again, it's hard not to think about awakening as just being something that's happening to us. We are awakening to a deeper reality. We are moving towards illumination. We are moving towards enlightenment. But as we've said before, there's never a finish line with that. But what I'm saying here, and what Ibn Arabi says, the divine being is always moving towards a furtherance of the knowledge of the divine being's own self, which comes into creation in the new creation by virtue of our modality of relationship, the two sides together.
So I have a quote about that too. Actually, it's from one of our own books, so I guess I don't have to say that it's a quote. But anyway, through all the experiences we have in life in the material realm, there's an action that takes place through us. The ancient Sufis say that each person has their own activity and perfection, which are in effect an influx of the universal activity of the soul of the world. Divine energy can affect the material world and connect other realms with the manifest world. And if you know the Sufi invocation, it includes the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty. So this is one of the aspects of the human that is a reflection of the divine. And it is all very unique what it is that we contribute, our own activity and our own perfection. And that will affect what it is that is being unveiled. If you could take an example of walking in the morning, some people will be walking, and because of their own hima is another word for what their heart is aching to have revealed to them, because of their own hima, their own activity, their own perfection, different things will be revealed to them when they look up into the trees, and when they look up into the sky and see the birds. Not only just the things that they will set their eyes upon, but all the inspirations that come through, that is only coming through for you. And don't forget that we are the sense organs of the divine. So we are treating the divine to our own vision. And now that we're speaking about Tawil, it's an unfolded vision that includes many levels and remembrances and joyful feelings and thankfulness. And we could bring all of the divine qualities into this that are now reflected back to the divine through our own experiencing.
So let's dive a little bit deeper into Tawil. You might be wondering, well, how does this come about? How can it be that we can be in this state of relational unity with what we are experiencing? What is it that enables that to bring about a deeper experience of the underlying reality that is inherent in both ourself and what we're experiencing? Well, we've talked before about, I said one of my favorite chapters in Murshid's writings, his works, is where he talks about spiritual circulation through the veins of nature. And in a previous class, we talked about, well, what is it that circulates through the veins of nature? It's light, okay? And Murshid said, there's but one sacred scripture, and the leaves of the trees are the pages of that scripture. So this process of Tawil can only take place through communication that occurs through light. So how does that take place? When we think of the word light, we tend to think of it in a generic sort of way. Well, there's the light of the sun, there's the light of a light bulb. It's the same light, it's just photons. Okay, well then we may have learned, well, there's also a different kind of light. The Sufis talk about the light of the angelic realm, the uncreated light, the all-pervading light. But again, we tend to think of it, well, that's all the same stuff. It's just a different order of light. Well, that's true. But then how can it be that Tawil can take place if it's just the same stuff with light? Well, think about fiber optic cable. Some of you listening to this probably get your internet through fiber optic cable. And if you could see inside that cable, if you could perceive it, it's light that's carrying all the information of the internet through that cable. Well, how is that? Well, somehow that information is entangled with, it's interspersed with all the light that's moving through that cable. And we just have to have a way of pulling out what we're looking for. Just like when we log on to the internet and search for something, we're making a request to pull out a specific bit of information from the trillions of bits of information on the internet. Well, when we're having an experience of relational unity, each of us has a unique light. And it's not just a unique, okay, this frequency of light for this person, that frequency for that person. You could say it's a modality of relationship that takes place through light. And that's what's unique. That's the unique signature of our soul. And so that's how the information is intertwined between us and what we're experiencing, the effect of light upon light. The communication takes place through light. What's gained from that is in the form of light. It's in the form of what the Sufis say is the returning light, that which returns to the divine with the wisdom that's been gained from our life experiences. And we're always partaking of the descending light, Tanzine, that Ravani Ra was talking about. But this isn't like, okay, now it's going down, now it's going up. It's all happening in both directions all the time. And when we plug into an interface, into the Barzakh, through our relationship with whatever we're experiencing, and this relationship is determined by what it is that we're desiring. What are we wanting? Are we wanting an insight? Are we wanting to experience a particular quality? Are we wanting to experience something that's revealed in what we're in relationship with? That's all happening through this exchange of light. And even more remarkable, here we are made of light. Okay, we are beings of light. We're experiencing through light. We're communicating through light. We're always transformed by light, and we're always transforming light that returns. So we're in this, I mean, if there was a way for us to perceive this with our senses, we would just be overwhelmed by how beautiful this process is. What's really happening when we are in a fully present relationship with what we're experiencing.
So let's have a full experience of what he was just talking about. So we can do this on our breath, so that one way of doing this, at least, would be as we inhale, we're bringing in all those kinds of light that Azarbash was speaking about. Why don't you mention a few of the different ones we were talking about, how we could...
Well, there's the light that comes to us from, okay, well, good question. So this may be something for a future class, but many of you are familiar with the purification breaths, working with the different elements. So we can say there's the light that is conveyed in the earth element. That's a unique form of light. The water element, the fire element, the air element, the ether element. There's the light that is present in the subtle realms of existence, the jinn realm, the angelic realm, and so on. There's the light. Okay.
So we have all those choices of what you're bringing in. You are inhaling and sensing this amazing light coming from everything in existence. And then as it comes to us, we're going to be exhaling, but we're going to exhale and bring our own touch, our own uniqueness, and our own light out, radiating through this creation and through all the realms to the divine. So we're going to be inhaling the light and exhaling the light. And it's all changed every time that it goes from one move to the next. So let's do the inhaling and exhaling like that for a while. And letting it transform us. We're relishing it as it moves. We're enjoying the effects on everything around us. The effects on the divine. Each time is completely different. So much has changed. Inhale, there's blessings from everywhere, from all the animals, from nature, all of existence. And we're contributing things we don't even know we have that are just emerging from this experience. gets to be too much to keep in our minds, and so we have to hold it all in our hearts. Now we can just breathe regularly and notice the change in our being and the change in everything around us. We feel great thankfulness. So as we finish this experience, I'd like to offer that this is a way to increase that surface area that you were speaking about, Azabaj. Through light.
So I'm thinking about a couple classes ago was on consciousness, and I'm thinking about Pir Vilayat saying it's important every time we sit and meditate to have a particular intention. So the same is true with when we're wanting to have an experience with Tawil. There's just like Pir Vilayat talked about the different directions of meditation, the transcendent, the cosmic, the turning within, the awakening in life. And we've done some practices in previous classes connecting up different aspects of our being, different vibrational levels. We've done the zikr of light, which links together our angelic self with our physical being. Last time we did a practice linking the jinn realm, the realm of genius and creativity, with the physical realm. So these would be different ways we can use modulating consciousness to lay the groundwork to experience Tawil in a particular direction, whether it's a deeper experience of multiple levels of reality. So that would be one way. But we could also experience Tawil across different times. And this is one we probably don't think about so much. It's easier to think about the spatial aspect of opening awareness up, or the cosmic aspect, thinking about breathing in the light of the stars and so on, even thinking back to the Big Bang. But across times, that's one that's probably a little less familiar. But we can pick different circumstances in the past in our lives, and our usual perspective is centered in the present space, present time, and we don't usually have an experience of a simultaneous existence of our present self and those past states of being. But we can open up our consciousness to make that a possibility. And just like we did this practice for Bonnie Roth, took us through this exchange with the breath, we can do an exchange with the breath that transcends time, transcends the present and the past. And in some previous series of classes, we've done a practice of tuning into our awakened self of the future and partaking of that illumination in the present. We can do the same kind of thing, thinking about a past circumstance and holding that past experience in our heart along with our present sense of self, coming into a state of relational unity with that experience and breathing into that past circumstance a quality that perhaps we didn't know was available to us, or it would have been so good if we had access to that quality. We thought we were just really cut off from something that would help us in that circumstance. But now we can breathe that quality and feel it becoming available to that past self and that past experience. And it's not going to magically go back and erase it. It's like we can't make it like it never happened, particularly a traumatic experience, but we can do something that changes how that's integrated into our whole sense of self. So why don't we try that? Pick something
Good.
from the
I was
past.
going to tell you we must do that.
Yes, pick something from the past, and you don't have to pick something just terrible. I mean, if you're in therapy and you're dealing with some very traumatic thing, probably be better to work on this with your therapist. But if it's something maybe not so heavy duty, but just something that just maybe it's a regret from the past, or if only you had known this or that. So try that. Think of what quality, if you really felt that this was available to you then, would have made a difference. And now feel yourself integrating this past you and the present you, all part of you, because who you are is not just this sitting and listening to me talking to you right now. It encompasses all these different times, including the future, and includes other subtle realms of reality. But right now we're highlighting a slice of this because we can't take the whole thing in at once. So let's just try this for a few moments. Think of what quality, and it's not like you're sending it to yourself in the past. You feel like this is all your own being, and you're opening up to this quality now becoming available or suffusing the whole circumstance and allowing possibilities now to open up that were not foreseen in that time in the past. So let's try this for a bit. And as you continue this for a bit more, perhaps you can recall the part of a previous class where we talked about fractals that have a self-similar nature. You look at a fractal pattern on a computer, you can magnify it a million times and it'll look similar to what you started with, but it won't ever be the same. But we've talked about the idea of there being knots in the fractal being kind of a energy circulation pattern of your being through time, through space, through subtle realms. And so the knots can be certain unresolved issues from the past. So as you continue this breathing quality, feel like this knot in the fractal nature of your being, in which you're interconnected with everything else in existence, that this knot is opening up and restoring a flow of energy that had been blocked up to now. So this is an example of Sufis talk about in healing. First stage is mu'id, which means a restoration to a previous state of wholeness. So see if you can feel that happening in your being. Mu'id. And as that knot is resolved, there's more than just a restoration of a previous state of wholeness. Now, new possibilities can emerge. So the term for this is muhi. This is transformation beyond the original state. That now you're becoming more than what was there before. So you've experienced Tawil, in this case with a circumstance across time. And the fruit of this experience is an opening and a furtherance of unfolding of something that was not there before. It wasn't a possibility until this happened. And the fruit of this is not only something for what you think of as your human self. The fruit of this is something for the divine being, for your personal angel, for your personal Lord. The divine is discovering and experiencing the same time that you are. The Tawil is not a static experience, it's an ecstatic experience of ongoing emergence. It doesn't have a finished state. It's not like, okay, now I get it. This is the archetypal nature. The archetype is changing, evolving, and it's never finished.
Beautiful. I wanted to testify a little bit about this experience, and when you brought it up at Omega, that I participated in it and thought of myself as a little girl and thought of my connection with this little girl. And I don't think there was a specific wazifa, but there was just this great strength of being. And when I was a little girl, I was very spiritual even as a little girl, and I never knew where that came from. And when I realized that it was from me in the future, which is me at that situation, loving that little girl at a very young age myself, then I understood why it was that I had the spiritual tendency and why I felt cared for and loved. And I really feel like that's what happened there. So extremely powerful experience. So I recommend trying it. And I had another way of speaking of Tawil. This is from The World Turned Inside Out, which I would recommend to you, by Tom Cheetham. I don't know if you can see that. Let me probably be backwards. Tom Cheetham writes and explains the philosophy of Henry Corbin. And of course, Henry Corbin was an Islamicist who spoke on people like Ibn Arabi. So it's a wonderful, wonderful explanation that helps us to understand some of the traits that we were talking about today. So this is what he speaks about as Tawil. The transformation of the sensory world into symbols, into open-ended mysteries that shatter, engage, and transform the entire being of the creature, of the person, really, we're speaking of here. So listen to those words. We're talking about open-ended mysteries, shattering, engaging, and transforming us. Way different than just analyzing something. We're allowing them to come in, or the birds, or the experience of the sky, the experience, well, of beings that we meet. We allow them to engage and transform us and shatter us. Well, what happens then? Now our experience is opened out and others then can perceive that opening out, that transformation in us, and it just leads to more transformation. So it's an amazing, repetitive, cumulative kind of process.
So think back to the invocation that we start every class with, that begins with toward the one, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty. It doesn't say arriving at the one.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't say the final state we're going to arrive at. It's always moving towards something, but that something could never possibly be complete, could never possibly be done, because if it ever could be, there'd be no life. There'd be no living God and manifestation. And so it's really important to keep in mind with Tawil, but also other things we've talked about presence, we've talked about revelation. All of these things are emergent states, emerging. They're not completed states. We're not having a revelation of something that's been somewhere and now the revelation is done. And there's no end to revelation. There's no end to the wisdom that can be discovered through our relationship in existence with the divine. It's never going to be complete. There's never, just like if the leaves of the trees are the pages, there's no end to the leaves and trees. There's no end to the variety of those leaves. There's no end to the wisdom gleaned by our relationship with those leaves. And so we could say that Pir Vilayat would always talk about the pug marks of the bear, indications that there'd been a bear somewhere. So what we think of as our reality, the world that our consciousness tends to limit us to, is filled with symbols. It's filled with clues. It's filled with breadcrumbs everywhere that are pointing towards a deeper reality. And these could be anything. It could be the sun coming up in the sky, as Ravani Rao referred to earlier. It could be some music that comes on the radio. It can be the smile of a baby. It could be a bird's song. It could be a spontaneous experience in meditation. It could be reading a poem or hearing some music, and now a level of meaning comes to you that you didn't see before. And every single time Rabani Ra and I do a class, whether it's individually or together, there's always things that emerge on the fly, insights that we've talked about this, weren't planned. We didn't know they were going to come forth because they are discovered by virtue of the relationship of what's going on. And what's going on, it's not just the two of us here, it's all of you listening to this, whether now or maybe 10 years from now, somebody's going to tune into the YouTube channel and find some of these classes that is creating a field that draws forth a particular blend of unique lights of every being involved, that enables a wisdom to come forth that would not come forth otherwise. And if I had one thing I could convey to you and to anybody else that was interested in a conversation like this, I would say each person, you have this same capacity to open up to emergent wisdom constantly in your life. And you don't have to have meditated for years. You don't have to have read 20 mystical books. You don't have to be trying. You have to allow yourself to be in a natural state of experience, and then this comes. This is what comes forth. It's the nature of reality. So I'd like to do a meditation now.
Let's do it.
So here's a big swoop of how we can experience Tawil. So we've talked about, just to review, talked about Tawil with something in manifestation, with a rose, with another person, could be with the sky, with the bird, could be with a subtle level of reality, the jinn realm, the angelic realm. It could be you, and however you think of it, your transcendent self, your personal Lord, your personal angel. Do any of those. It can be with you across times in your own life. It could be you tuning into future events that you have no idea what they're going to be. But we've talked before about the idea, the Sufis talk about that there's an allegory of the soul. It's like our soul's story. And some of these allegories have been written for some great beings, such as Avicenna and so on. But each of us has our own emergent allegory of our own soul, our own scripture of our life, so to speak. So here's a new thought. We can do Tawil with that. So close your eyes. So this is a Tawil, rather than thinking of Tawil with an object to discover the deeper nature of, this is Tawil with meaningfulness. So this is a Tawil. You can start by just doing kind of a survey of significant events and times in your life, insights that you had, joys and sorrows. And imagine, just like quilters sometimes do, that all of this has been and is being woven into a tapestry of your life, which depicts your soul's story. But this tapestry, unlike an ordinary quilt, is multidimensional. It goes across time and goes beyond time. It goes beyond the physical realm into subtle realms. So just imagine an image, however it comes to you. It might be different colors and frequencies of light or sounds, or different landscapes that are all part of a panorama of your life. And it's not like a still movie shot. It's teeming motion and emotion. So now let your intention be that you would like to be able to enter into a state of relational unity with the allegory of your own soul, a state of harmonic relationship with the allegory of your soul. And you don't have to figure out how to do this. Just put that out as your intention and be open. And if you're familiar with the story of Flatland, these two-dimensional beings, that somehow a three-dimensional being entered their world, but at first they didn't know what was going on, because as the being would walk, they'd see a circle over here and a circle over there, and it would change size and would magically appear at a different place. And they go, and finally some wise people thought, well, this must be from a higher dimension. That's why we can't understand it from the dimension that we think that we're in. But once they could do that, they could begin to have an understanding of what this three-dimensional being was about, even though they couldn't see it directly. So imagine, in a sense, you're doing the same thing with the meaningfulness of your soul's story. And this story goes before you came into this world. It goes back to the creation of your soul. And that creation is renewed at every instant. And it goes into the subtle realms on which you continue to exist, even if you're not aware of it, your Jinn self, your angelic self. So imagine now you're gaining wisdom that perhaps you can't put into ordinary thoughts or even ordinary emotions or words, but you're having a deep understanding of the meaningfulness of the allegory of your soul, which is always emerging into further and further states of unfoldment of your unique expression of divinity. So just be with that for a little bit. Hazrat Inayat Khan said, "This is not my body. This is the temple of God." So what do we have in the temple? We have an altar. And we're usually thinking, well, we go to the temple to worship God at this altar, which is true. But imagine now that the divine being comes to this temple to discover the sacredness and the uniqueness of the divine being's own self, as it can only be expressed through you. So the altar is the ongoing birthplace of the sacred. And the allegory of your soul is a part of the allegory of the divine soul, cosmic soul. And we could say the whole universe, as Pir Vilayat would talk about with a capital U, is engaged in a never-ending process of Tawil with itself, with its own being, through all the names and forms. And may all souls awaken to the never-ending blessings that they constantly receive, and also the never-ending blessings that they constantly bring forth and give to all of existence, to the divine. Amen.
Mhm.